fans? Welcome back to 237, back with another review. As I get ready for the month of October, which, aside from finishing up some anthologies that I have, I'll mostly be doing film adaptations on the works of Stephen King. I've already done a couple, get ready for October. But this is one that I'm kind of mixed on. I used to like it when I was a kid. This was one of the first ones I saw. I think I first got into Stephen King when I was like 8 or 9 years old. I, I was always at the video store renting his movies like every weekend. There was a lot that played on cable. This is one that played on cable quite a bit. And yes, it did spawn a whole franchise. I have not one iota of interest in checking out the franchise. Mainly because it's like Amityville Horror. One, there's a shit ton that have less and less to do with the main story. And just a lot of them are not needed. However, there was a remake in 2009, which I did not see, and there was a remake in 2020 that it premiered in 2020, set to come out later this year, I guess. I guess this is a cult film, a cult favorite. I can see why. It's definitely in the so bad it's good category. But it's 1984's Children of the Corn, which is a great title. It's a cool concept. I've always loved this cover. It's a great poster. The older DVD I had was this sort of an older version of this. I don't even know what happened to that DVD. I just picked this up recently. I know there's an Arrow Blu-ray of it, but I'm fine with this. But I never noticed how some of the corn at the bottom is like kids. Never noticed that before I bought this. Now, of course, it's based on the short story that was collected in Night Shift, which I think was 75. I believe it was 75, 76 when this was released. And there's actually a few stories in this that was adapted. Not many good ones. Let's see, there was The Mangler, which I haven't seen. I Am the Doorway, I know was adapted into something. The Boogeyman, which is coming out at some point. Trucks, which became Maximum Overdrive, and there was a TV version called Trucks. I'm kind of in the minority. Maximum Overdrive is kind of in the same camp as this, as humorous as to how bad it is. Sometimes they come back. Lawnmower Man, Children of the Corn, and then The Ledge and Quitters Inc. At least those two were in Cat's Eye. I really like the story of The Ledge. But I have not read the short story of Children of the Corn. And again, I think there's like 11 or 12 movies in this series. I have no interest in checking out the sequels, but maybe I'll check out the 2009 remake and then the new one at some point. Which I know Preston Bailey, who played Cody in Dexter, plays Isaac in the 2009 one. And yeah, this is one of those movies where Stephen King films where the concept is cool. It's a neat concept, but the film is not really that well made. Now, it was directed by Fritz Kirsch, which I've heard that name before. I don't know if I've seen 1990 version of Swamp Thing, the TV series. I haven't seen anything else that he's done. Anyway. But it stars Peter Horton, who is kind of like a great value version of Tony Goldwyn in this. Linda Hamilton, got Sarah Connor, which it is kind of hard to buy Sarah Connor being pushed around by a bunch of kids. Also, you got John Franklin playing Isaac, who he's playing like an 11 or 12-year-old, but he was actually like 25 when this came out because of that disorder he has. Similar to the kid in Burial Ground, the Italian film. He was like 25 in real life. And Courtney Gaines plays Malachi. He was in Rob Zombie's Halloween. He was a child killer in L.A. Noire. He pops up as like a horror cameo in some horror films. And of course, it was shot in Iowa. It takes place in Nebraska. Put out by Hal Roach Studios, so the same studio that did Little Rascals. I'm just reading up on this because I did do it earlier. But I guess there's going to be more dialogue, but decided to go with more of a visual story. Oh well. This movie really isn't worth getting that deep into it. Plus, I'm already almost 7 minutes in. The story is basically okay. There's this small town in Gatlin, Nebraska, where one day all the kids kill all the adults. Well, except for these two kids, Sarah and Job. But there's this cult of the children led by Isaac, who I'm surprised is not even on the back. Malachi is. Which Isaac and Malachi have kind of become like two of the biggest, like creepy kid characters in all of horror, but they're really only known for this film. And I take that back. The only sequel I would see would be Part 6, because that's the only one that brings Isaac back. And both Isaac and Malachi are the best parts of this movie. Yes, they're over the top. They're crazy to watch, especially Isaac. But uh, Courtney Gaines as Malachi is really good when he's not speaking. I mean, if he's just acting with his face and his body language, then he's really good. But a lot of his line delivery, like "sees her," like he's very just. You can tell these are very inexperienced kids. But they kill all the adults because Isaac, he's this young prophet of some altered religion that worships a god that they call He Who Walks behind the Rose. And then we jump to 3 years later, which the opening scene when they kill everyone in town with Isaac just standing outside with that big flat brim, like a Quaker hat. He does kind of remind me of like sort of the farmer version of Alex from Clockwork Orange. Like I know Alex wears a bowler, but even the first time I ever saw a still of Clockwork Orange, which was when Alex is looking at the lady singing, holding up milk, I thought that was Isaac. I thought it was the same actor. So he kind of reminds me of Alex to an extent, mainly just in that scene when he's wearing the hat. But so then 3 years later, we have Bert and Vicky, played by Peter Horton and Sarah Connor. They're on their way through Nebraska for either an interview or for him to start a job as a doctor. They end up in Gatlin and they realize things are wrong and they're taken by the kids. There is more to it than that. I mean, it shows this one kid trying to escape. He's killed by Malachi. He's put in the road to stop them. And they pretty much spend the movie looking for a phone or a person to call the cops. They're also lost. And the kids try to catch them to make them the next sacrifice. Now, one, it is a cool concept. I mean, if you're a fan of things like Lord of the Flies or something like that, it does remind me of Lord of the Flies, especially when all the kids are in like the clearing of the cornfield, and Isaac talks about like the Blue Man, which is a crucified police officer. They have their own religion, their own like appointed jobs, like how Malachi's the enforcer, but there is a this movie almost would have been more interesting if you just focused on the kids, more kind of like the crumble of this foundation that they have. Like, I know the whole thing with Bert and Vicky's in the book. It's in the story, and it's they're outlanders, they're interlopers. They're going through their town. It even has like the old horror movie trope with the old guy at the gas station that has to send them on their way, has to send them to the movie. But the scenes that work for me the best are the ones with just the kids, and we kind of watch the crumbling, like when this rift between Isaac and Malachi, because Isaac keeps getting mad at Malachi for all these unsanctioned killings, and you know, Malachi thinks Isaac is too incompetent and too lenient. It almost would have been more interesting to just watch that, and then like when Malachi finally stands up to Isaac, convinces all the other kids to put Isaac in the sacrificial spot. So it does have this Lord of the Flies type feel to it that I think would have been a lot more interesting. Maybe the sequels do that. I don't really know. I do remember being a young kid and seeing Children of the Corn 4 in the video store. And I've never seen about. I remember being a kid and just seeing the cover of like a kid holding a scythe and corn. And yet the acting is pretty bad, even from the leads, even from Horton and Hamilton. But not that they're bad, but just I guess they're serviceable. John Franklin as Isaac, he's just entertaining because he's so over the top. And of course, since it's a Stephen King story, he's the religious zealot. And it is kind of hard to believe that there wasn't one adult that was able to stop any of these kids. And for 3 years, I mean, no government saw that there was like nothing going on in this town. Like no kids were in school, the cops were killed or whatever. And I get it's the 80s. It's a tiny ass town in the middle of Nebraska, but I guess it is one of those things where if you can't buy into that, you're not going to buy into the film at all. But one thing it does do well is the atmosphere. It does do a good job at just creating this dead town. Not just the town, but even when they're on the road, just kind of showing just the barren fields of nothing that is Central North America. It did do a good job with that. The score is okay, which I can't remember the guy's name. It's kind of a mix between like the theme kind of sounds like an Amityville horror theme, and then other parts almost sounds like they're trying to do the Omen score. But there are parts like when the film picks up, the music does get a bit more intense. Jonathan Elias, he's the one that did the music. But I mean, there's nothing super interesting about the cinematography or anything like that. The music and the atmosphere is fine. It's serviceable. It does its job. And really, the most entertaining scenes are the ones with Isaac and Malachi. That's really it. This does have one of the most sort of mixture of disappointing and what the fuck was that kind of reveals of this entity that they worship. Which also I do want to point out, season 4 of South Park, the wacky molestation adventure is a good parody of this. They kind of go more into like the Lord of the Flies type aspect, which I wish this film did. But yeah, season 4 of South Park, a great parody of this. So the character of Bert is able to get these kids to turn pretty quickly. It kind of shows how the minds of kids work. He just comes in, beats the hell out of Malachi, and is able to say, hey, your religion is stupid. You need parents. So they're all just like, oh yeah, right. And then they all just walk away. Speaking of South Park, Isaac sounds like Cartman when he's up on the cross, like begging for forgiveness. But the reveal of He Who Walks Behind the Rose, it looks like TV static. Like, okay, it has like the tremor thing where it's like the ball under the ground moving. But then when it surfaces, imagine like this blob of TV static that's yellow. But when it comes up on someone, it turns red. And it roars and whatnot. But then they set fire to the field or the crops. It explodes, and you get these 80s uh, like 80s optical effects of fire. And in the mushroom cloud, you get like this sort of face, like this smoky sort of demon face that's screaming. And it looks so hokey and so cheesy. And it's like that's supposed to be this big villain. And I've seen some bad ones in Stephen King movies. I mean, it's still a better like reveal of the creature or whatever than say something like Dreamcatcher. But yeah, I don't really know what to say about it. It was a movie I liked as a kid, but then you know I wasn't much older when I realized this is kind of a bad movie, but it definitely has its charm. It has its cult appeal. I can definitely see why people like it. If there's any fans of the whole series, that I don't understand, but the whole aspect of just this religious cult of kids out in the middle of nowhere, killing all the adults and having this like very religious version of Lord of the Flies, that's interesting to me. And that would have been more interesting, but the acting goes from serviceable to laughable. Uh, the good kids, Sarah and Job, they're pretty annoying, especially Job, who narrates the film with real hokey lines like, "Dad wouldn't let me go because Dad didn't like Isaac." Uh, he's pretty smart, my dad. Like, really dumb lines. It's not a bloody film. Wikipedia says it's like a supernatural slasher. It's not a slasher. I mean, yeah, more. You do get a body count, but it's definitely not a slasher. And then this movie just ends like almost like an Italian film. It just they solved the problem. They decided to keep walking in the direction they were going, and then it just ends. Yeah, there's not a whole lot to it, and I imagine the story isn't much deeper. But really, I think this is one of those Stephen King films where just the concept of creepy killer kids out in the cornfield, the name has a nice ring to it, the poster's really cool. I think that, more than anything, is kind of what stood the test of time, rather than the movie itself. But Isaac is a cool character. Uh, he's fun to watch. So is Malachi. There is a fan theory that He Who Walks Beyond the Rose is Randall Flagg from The Stand. It's never been confirmed, but some people think it is. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, even from just the 80s, which was kind of the Stephen King film boom, it's definitely not one of the good ones. Just, I mean, it's better than a lot that came out after it, especially in the 90s and 2000s. But other than its atmosphere, its overall concept, and a few of the fun performances, there's not a whole lot to it. But it was one of the first Stephen King films I saw when I was really young. It played on cable a lot. So it's one I'm definitely familiar with. Still a big fan of that cover. I do think that's a really cool cover. But I don't really have a whole lot to say about Children of the Corn. So, yeah, as we approach October, I'll be doing more Stephen King films. I will pick at the anthology collection that I still have. I do have sort of a stack of Stephen King films to get to, but I will be picking up a lot more. So, mostly going to be doing like theatrical releases, but I may do some of his long as hell TV miniseries. But yeah, that's Children of the Corn. Not great, but I can definitely see its cult appeal. And thank you for watching.